A private corporation once collected taxes from 200 million people. Not a government, not a king, a business. They say the British gave India railways, but those tracks weren't built for progress. They were built to carry India's wealth out of the country. And that's where this story begins. Not with generosity, but with extraction. Welcome to the Time Navigator. Let's go back to the early 1700s. India wasn't a poor country. It was one of the richest regions on Earth, accounting for nearly a quarter of the global economy. Bengal alone was so prosperous that European travelers described it as richer than London. Indian textiles, especially muslin and silk, were so fine that they were traded across continents. Some fabrics were so delicate, they were called woven air. This wasn't a weak nation waiting to be developed. This was a global economic powerhouse. In 1600, a private corporation arrives, the British East India Company. Not an empire, not a government, a business. At first, they ask for permission to trade. They build small ports, make alliances. But slowly, things change. By 1757, at the Battle of Plassey, the company defeats the Nawab of Bengal. Not just through military strength, but through betrayal and political manipulation. And just like that, a corporation begins ruling millions of people. After taking control of Bengal, the company gains the right to collect taxes. And this is where everything shifts. Farmers who once paid reasonable dues now face crushing taxation. In some areas, taxes rose so high that peasants had to sell their land or starve. Meanwhile, the wealth collected wasn't reinvested into India. It was sent back to Britain. Dadabhai Naoroji later called this the drain of wealth. And it wasn't just a theory. It was visible in everyday life. Let's talk about the weavers. Before British rule, Indian textile workers were among the best in the world. But under colonial policies, they were forced to sell goods at extremely low prices. British manufactured imports flooded the market. Traditional industries struggled to survive under new economic pressures designed to favor British production. Some accounts claim extreme measures were used to suppress local competition, though historians debate the extent. What is not debated is the collapse that followed. By the early 1800s, India's thriving textile industry had sharply declined. And Britain, it was booming, fueling its industrial revolution with Indian raw materials like cotton. Now let's come back to the railways. Yes, Britain built railways in India, but look closer. The railway lines were designed to connect raw material regions to ports, not villages to cities for local development. Cotton, opium, grain, all efficiently transported to ships leaving Indian shores. And here's the twist. Indians largely paid for these railways through taxes. But the financial returns went primarily to British investors, often with guaranteed profits. So the system worked perfectly, just not for India. If this is changing how you see history, that's exactly why this channel exists. Subscribe to the Time Navigator, because the real story is often very different from what we were told. So what did all of this actually look like for a real person? Not on a map, not in a ledger, but in a life. Picture a weaver in Dhaka. His grandfather was celebrated across trade routes. His father still earned enough to feed a family of 6. But by the time he picks up the loom, the market has changed. British cloth, machine-made, cheap, imported, fills the bazaars. The price he can charge has collapsed. The taxes he must pay have not. He isn't lazy. He isn't unskilled. He is, in fact, among the most talented craftsmen on earth. But the system around him has been quietly, methodically, tilted. And this wasn't unique to weavers. Farmers faced it. Merchants faced it. Potters, dyers, metalworkers. An entire ecosystem of skilled Indian producers, all navigating an economy that was no longer designed for them to succeed in. Historian Angus Maddison estimated that India's share of global GDP fell from approximately 25% in 1700 to just 4% by 1950. That isn't decline. That is a controlled contraction. And the people who lived inside that contraction, they didn't see charts. They saw empty plates. They saw children who couldn't be fed. They saw a future that kept getting smaller. This is the foundation on which the famines arrived. Not from nowhere, but from a system already stretched to breaking. Now we get to the darkest part. The famines. In 1770, Bengal faced a devastating famine. An estimated 10 million people died, roughly 1/3 of the population. And yet, taxes were still collected. Grain continued to move through trade networks. Now imagine this for a moment. A farmer in Bengal watches his crops fail. His family weakens day by day. He sells what little he owns to pay taxes, hoping to survive another week. But relief doesn't come, only demands. Fast forward to 1943, the Bengal famine. Up to 3 million people died. Witnesses described people collapsing in the streets, children starving in cities where food still existed, but was not accessible to them. British wartime policies prioritized resource allocation elsewhere in the empire. When concerns were raised, Prime Minister Winston Churchill made remarks that many historians interpret as dismissive of the scale and human impact of the crisis. This wasn't just a natural disaster. Policy decisions played a role in shaping its outcome. Now we come to the most debated figure in this story. Economist Utsa Patnaik estimates that between 1765 and 1938, Britain extracted nearly $45 trillion worth of wealth from India, adjusted to today's value. Other historians and economists debate the exact number, but there is broad agreement on one point. There was a large-scale transfer of wealth from India to Britain over nearly 2 centuries. India helped fund Britain's industrial revolution, global expansion, financial dominance. Colonial rule didn't just take wealth, it reshaped systems. Education was redesigned to produce administrators for the empire. Local industries were weakened. Economic dependency became embedded over time. By the time India gained independence in 1947, it wasn't simply moving forward, it was rebuilding. But here's what that system didn't count on. The people it tried to silence kept talking. Dadabhai Naoroji, the man who first named the drain of wealth, didn't just write about it. He took it to the British Parliament itself. In 1892, he became the first Indian elected to the House of Commons, and from inside that institution, he made Britain confront its own numbers. Bal Gangadhar Tilak declared, at a time when saying so was dangerous, "Swaraj is my birthright, and I shall have it. Self-rule, not requested, demanded." Gopal Krishna Gokhale built institutions, schools, reform movements, a generation of thinkers. He understood that reclaiming a nation begins with reclaiming its mind. And then there was Gandhi, who looked at the most powerful empire on earth and chose a spinning wheel as his weapon, not a gun, a charkha. The same textile industry that Britain had dismantled, Gandhi made it an act of defiance to rebuild it, thread by thread, in every Indian home. Every yard of homespun cloth was a quiet revolution, a declaration that India could and would provide for itself. These weren't people who accepted the story they were given. They interrogated it. They documented it. They organized around it. And perhaps most importantly, they refused to let the world forget it. Because the opposite of extraction isn't just keeping what is yours, it's knowing your own worth. Well enough to stand up and say, this stops here. Now imagine a different timeline. No massive extraction, no forced deindustrialization, no repeated crises under exploitative systems. Would India have industrialized earlier? Would it have remained one of the world's dominant economies? We don't know. But it's a question worth asking. So here's something to think about. If this happened today, would we call it development or exploitation? And if a nation's rise was built, at least in part, on the systematic extraction of another, does that belong only in the past? Or does it still matter today? Tell me what you think. And if you want more stories that challenge everything you thought you knew, subscribe to the Time Navigator. Because history isn't just about the past, it's about who we choose to listen to.